Hey, Liberty North AP Psych. This is Mr. Davis. We had my son and daughter just started their online learning this week for their college. And my wife was actually on a chat, so it did not work, surprisingly enough. So I'm going to do it again real quick. We're going to do a fast one. So I'm going to give you the first personality. So sorry about that. So we're going to go real quickly. I'm going to try to record another one. So we're going to start chapter 15, which starts on page 595. And what I want to do, which we will do, is number one, the assignments have already been posted. The completion date is April 10th. Okay, so you still have till this Friday, April 4th, to finish and conclude your chapter 4 assignments and your journal critique. But we're going to start chapter 15 today with notes and covering information via the live stream. And so then it's kind of alternating each week what's due. So we'll start chapter 15 and cover it as we're going, and then it won't be due till 2 weeks. Okay. All right. So I think you're going to have a lot of fun. This chapter, personality, is a very, very fun, very complex subject. But in class with the interactions and the personality tests and stuff, it's just so much fun. I know it's going to take a little bit of a hit with the virtual learning, but hopefully we can do it together and give it some justice. So if you want to get out a sheet of paper and label that at the top, chapter 15 lab, you will have to turn it in. You will be taking 10 personality tests. You'll be taking one from the live stream every day. And then at the end of each test, you need to answer 2 questions. Number 1, do you think it accurately described your personality? And number 2, is it measuring core or surface traits? Now, number 2, you're going to have to go back and fill in. And once we get to trait theory, we'll talk about the difference between core and surface traits. Some of you might already figure that out. But I tried to pick out through my education and my training just some personality tests that really just stuck out to me as fun and entertaining over time, if you will. So I think you're going to have a lot of fun. This first one is so much fun. And I'll have you, when I go through the answers, I'll have you kind of write down what each one represents, because you can give it to friends and family, which is encouraged. That's our scientific method. Give the test to others, give any of the tests to other people to test their validity, their reliability, and see if we can still, especially this first one. Okay, so when you go to assignments under chapter 15, if you click down, you'll see the lab there, and all 10 personality tests are labeled. So if you ever miss one, just go back to the live streams and get it, and make sure that you answer the 2 questions afterwards. Okay, and then today, and today only, you have an extra assignment. All right, so I'm going to read it to you. So number 1, test number 1, you're going to write down Freudian free association test. Okay, Freudian free association test. Okay. All right. You're going to number 1 to 6. Okay. You do not need to skip spaces. Okay. All right. Then we have to do a practice one on this one, because Freud, again, is all about the unconscious. So the goal of this personality test, Freud believed your personality comes from your unconscious mind. So we have to access that, which is hard, we did a few of these free association tests at the very beginning of the year. Okay, so practice one. So what's going to happen is, for each question, I'm going to give you a qualifying statement. So I'm going to say, think of this, think of that. And then you need to write down the first answer that comes to your mind related to the question or the prompt. Okay. Now, some of you will have other things coming to your mind, but you need to write down the first relevant answer that comes to your mind. Okay. So this practice. So think of a food. Okay, so the first food that comes to your mind, you're going to write it down. So tacos was my first food. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. Then I need to describe taco personality traits or non-physical descriptors. Okay, now some of those sometimes could be the same, but I chose spicy because spicy could be both physical and a personality trait. Diverse, fun, and flavorful. I thought flavorful could be both. Okay, all right. And that's what you're going to be doing for each of the 6 questions. Now, the goal is to come up with 3 personality traits. The more that you have, the more reliable and valid your results will be, the better the results will be. So just keep going if you can. Okay? All right. So here we go. Take a little seat here. All right, so 1 to 6. And I'm going to move pretty quickly, so when you're rewatching this, just pause, okay? But number 1 is think of an animal. Okay, first animal that comes to your mind, you need to write it down, okay? And hopefully you're going to be looking at like, well, I don't know why I wrote that animal down, but that's just your unconscious mind. Okay, now you need to describe that animal using at least 3 personality traits, non-physical descriptors. So you can't use furry. That's not going to work. So think of personality traits, okay? Okay, number 2, think of a color. Okay, and just write down your color. Now, describe that color. Number 3, think of a body of water. Okay, answer it, and then, okay, use non-physical descriptors to describe your body of water. Number 4 is think of a flower or a plant or any type of shrubbery. Okay, and write that down. And then you're going to describe that. Number 4, think of a natural disaster and describe that. And number 6, and then you're going to describe that subject. Okay. All right. So what you've done now, and pause this if you need to go back. Okay. But now what you've done is you've actually described unconsciously aspects of your personality. Okay. And here is what each of them stands for. Okay. So number 1, you are describing yourself, how you unconsciously view yourself. So you're describing yourself. So those should be personality traits, good or bad, that you believe are part of you, okay? Again, feel free to write that down so you can give it some, again, use the scientific method, especially on this one. I'm always interested to hear the results because generally this is considered one of the more accurate tests that we give, which is pretty amazing as it's very subjective. But, give it to other people in your family and friends and see what they think. Number 2, the color consciously view that others see you. Okay, so you think your friends and your family see those personality traits in you. Okay, now we'll get to it in psychoanalytic theory, but if there's a big gap between 1 and 2, then you have some self-concept issues. Number 3, body of water is your unconscious views of your future. Number 4, the flower is the unconscious view of your love life, or this moment, what you think of love, and it's romantic love. Number 5 is how unconsciously you think others view being in a relationship with you is like. Okay, so this is, so then look at it. Now be honest, accurate. It might not be what you like to hear or want to hear, but is it accurate? Okay. Answer that number 1. Again, hold on to number 2. We'll get there. Okay. Service traits. All right. Okay. So on page 595, we're going to start there today. And we're going to start with the definition of personality. And we are going to be on learning targets 2 and 3 for chapter. Okay. This document is on Canvas. All right. And your chapter 15 vocab is attached to chapter 12, 13, 14, and 15. Okay, so motivation, emotion, stress, and then personality. Now, if you notice, there's only 5 learning targets. We will mostly be talking about 2 and 3. Identify contributions of major researchers. And 3 is compare, contrast the different theories, okay, which are listed. All right, so let's define personality first today, and that's on page 595, in which it says, and I will read it, personality and individuals' character behaving. Okay, pretty good definition, except I would want you to add stable and enduring of behavior. And I think most of your books probably have that already in there written. Personality is a very complex topic. And when it comes to the nature nurture, there are huge nature influences and there are huge nurture influences. So it's a very complex thing. I think science has a hard time sometimes rating the heritability factor of personality. We know there are genetic influences. However, personality is something that is heavily impacted by your environment. So judging the heritability factor or how much nature actually has the impact is sometimes very difficult because, again, if I were to ask you, does your personality change depending on your environment? Do you show different traits at work, at home, with your friends, at school? Most of us are going to answer yes to that. So, that shows the impact of nurture there as being a very strong component of it. So, we want you to put stable and enduring in there because we would really, when we're measuring testing personality, we would really like to figure out what are the traits that you most consistently display. When we're attempting to describe or profile your personality, we want to know what do you consistently demonstrate, not what changes necessarily per environment. Okay? All right, then if you want to turn to page 595 or 596, and we'll be going to page 598 today. And we're going to talk about the psychoanalytic theory, which was Sigmund Freud. Okay, so if you remember back to chapter 1, Freud is one of those iconic psychologists, and he is, again, the one that we often refer to as genius or madness, okay, because there is a lot of Freud's theory that's just kind of, makes you say, but this is going to be an example of his genius. Everybody accepts this part of his theory. I think you can see it in your everyday life. Well, I know you can. So this is going to be the genius part of his personality theory. Now, Freud, again, remember, was the discoverer of the unconscious mind. So in the early 1900s, Freud said that we have a part of our mind called the unconscious mind that's hidden and that actually controls our behavior. Now, it's mainly filled with bad things that we repress and keep stuffing down there. So aggression, sexual motivations, and so on and so forth. However, he is the first one to name it, to be able to measure it, and to show and kind of demonstrate its influence on behavior. Now, a lot of people in the 1900s didn't even believe that the unconscious mind was real, let alone have any impact on behavior. Now we know, and with our technology and just advanced science that we have, I think more and more we're proving parts of Freud's theory, and that most of our thinking actually is at the unconscious level. Most of our daily processing is unconscious, which is what Freud was promoting, in the early 1900s. We also know today exactly that the unconscious mind does exist, and it is powerful. It's a powerful part of our mind and who we are. And it does have impacts on personality and behavior and thinking, okay? So this is part of Freud's genius theory, okay? So now Freud said, again, there were 3 levels to our mind. We have the unconscious mind, which is buried deep, but is the biggest part of us. We have the preconscious, which can go either conscious or unconscious. It's kind of where we hold things. The iceberg analogy, which is on page 597. It's not a good representation of it, but the idea is that 90% of the iceberg is underwater, and it's our unconscious mind. So most of the things that influence us are in that unconscious mind, and then 10% is above the water, which is unconscious mind, which according to Freud is a very small part of our personality, where it comes from in our thinking process. Okay. Now, and Freud's theory, which all of you probably have heard of this in various forms or the others, he believed there's 3 systems to our personality, okay, 3 parts, the id, ego, and the superego, okay? Let's just define each one first. Id is my pleasure principle, okay, and this is on page 598. And basically my id wants instant gratification. It wants what it wants, it's selfish, it is motivated just by pleasure, gratification, and obtaining what it wants. Now, if this sounds like a very small child, that's exactly where Freud kind of found it. right? He believed that you kind of developed these systems as you grew. The id developed first. And if you think about a small kid, that's exactly what the id is. You know, they're very egoistic. They only can see the world from their point of view. They don't like sharing. They throw fits when they don't get what they want. That's the id. It develops first. Okay. Ego is our reality principle. Okay, which basically means it's our rational self-control part of our personality. Okay, which it does involve obviously thinking rationally and logically. Okay, now again, if we go back to Piaget really quick and Kohlberg, again, both of them said that moral reasoning develops later because it does deal with hypothetical thinking, abstract thinking. This does the same thing, but it develops next generally. Okay, now these kind of run parallel with each other in development, but we'll stick with Freud's theory that this kind of develops next. Okay, all right. And then lastly, you have the superego, which is our morality principle, which is our moral reasoning, our moral thinking. It's that consciousness or that conscience, the little voice inside of you that tells you right from wrong. Okay, and Freud's systems of personality inside your mind at varying levels. The id is completely at the unconscious. Okay. The superego can be mainly in the preconscious. It can go back and forth. And my id, or excuse me, the id is in the unconscious, right? Okay. My ego is mainly in the conscious, and my superego is kind of in the preconscious conscious. Now we keep the id really suppressed because we don't like to know. Now it will sneak up to our conscious level at some times, and we'll be aware of what's in our id. But most of the time, Freud said that, you know, it's not very good stuff that's down there. We don't like to be aware of that, so we keep it repressed. Okay, but we have personality traits from each of these systems. Everybody has all three systems. Okay, you have an id, ego, and superego. Now, what we want is we want them to be in balance. And if they're in balance, then we're going to have a more healthy personality, according to Freud. If one of them gets out of balance or too powerful, then we're going to have a more unhealthy personality. Now, I think with the id, that makes sense. If the id becomes too powerful, you can't function in society. You probably will be in jail. You know, you're going to end up doing something that you probably shouldn't, id being most powerful. But you don't want the ego either, because if the ego is too powerful, I become too rational. I lack empathy. I don't have the ability to emotionally relate or connect to other people. I'm very rigid. You know, that's going to be an issue as well. And the superego. Most people think, well, you want the superego to be the strongest. Well, no, you don't, because if it's the strongest, you become very righteous, self-pious, judgmental. You become a nagging, overbearing. Okay, so it has negatives as well. So the goal is to have, we all have impatient person. I do lack patience. It's part of my personality and has been forever. That's an id trait. Okay, that is an id trait for me. Okay, it doesn't want to be patient. Okay, because it's not fun. It doesn't gratify. So, okay, so we have those things. All right. Okay, now again, we want them all together. Now, if you look on page 598 down at the bottom, you will see conversations you have with other people. Okay, but down at the bottom, page 598, it's got a man standing at an ATM machine. Okay, and he's got the very, very famous analogy, the devil on one shoulder, the angel on. Okay, anytime you see that, that is a reference to Freud's id, ego, superego. The devil is the id, the angel is the superego, and the person is the ego. Okay, and they are voicing the interaction that we all have. So the id at the ATM machine wants money. It just wants, okay? It wants money to go buy something. It wants immediate gratification. It doesn't care about laws. It doesn't even care about how much money you have in your bank account. It wants money, okay? The superego is obviously going to combat that. These two are mainly at war, and the ego's got to maintain the balance, okay? The superego is going to say, look, well, is there a way I can satisfy both the ego and the superego? And that would be, yes, let's withdraw money, but let's withdraw only $20. It gets its money. We're still financially responsible. Okay. And that way both can win. Now, if you've ever been in that situation and you eventually talk yourself into like, well, I don't need money. You know, I really don't need the money. It'd probably be better leaving it in my savings account. Your superego won. Okay. If you're like, oh man, I'm taking money. I'm just going to take it. I'm going to spend it today or whatever. Then your id won. Okay. All right. So another example, you know, we all have had thoughts in our head. Say it. Just say it. Just let them have it. Okay, the superego is now, hold on, you know, that's rude, that's inconsiderate, We need to be careful and treat other people. Okay. And then the ego is going to find a way in which I can balance them both. So maybe I'm going to give them the silent treatment, right? So then I can kind of have a little bit of satisfaction for the id and for the superego. Okay. Or if I just flat out don't say it, turn and walk away, my superego won. If I do say it, then my id won, right? Okay, let's go. Snoozers. Okay, who are our students who press snooze repeatedly, or just even if you use it on your alarm clock in the morning? Okay, all right, now which one of these three is my snooze button? Id, ego, or superego? Okay, now the id is just wants to sleep, right? That's what it wants. So no matter what, it wants to go to sleep. So it doesn't care about the clock, what time it is, what else I'm going to miss. I just want to sleep. Those of you who just end up sleeping in and come to school tardy, your id has won at those moments, okay? Superego is going to be like your mother. It's going to be like, you need to get up, be responsible. You got places to go. All right, you have responsibilities you got to fulfill. You don't have time to sleep. You've got enough sleep. Let's go. You got to move, okay? So what's the way in which the ego can give both what they want? Snooze, right? Okay. If I hit the snooze button, I got a few more minutes of sleep, but I can still not be late and take care of everything that I need to. Okay. Everybody see it? Okay. Now, if you're a big repeat snoozer, the ego is kind of given more in snooze like 9 times. Okay. It's the id. All right. Okay. All right. Kind of helps you understand them a little bit. Okay. So we all have personality traits that come from all 3 systems, right? Now, the more id traits I have indicates the stronger the id is. The more ego traits I have, the stronger the ego. And the more superego traits, the stronger the superego. Okay? And as we take other tests, you'll see some of you are more moralistic. Some of you are more rational. That's a big one. Are you a thinker? Are you a feeler? All right? And then some of us have maybe... Now, another example that I think helps is the movie Toy Story. Okay? The very first one. And it is heavily influenced by this theory of Freud. Actually, there are so many Freudian influences in the movie. We'll talk about some of those tomorrow. It's heavily influenced by Freudian theory. Now, you're not going to catch it unless you know Freud. But when you do, it's entertaining. It's funny. It kind of takes the childish part of the movie off. Far more than one. But can everybody see his name up here? Right there. Okay. So who's the, you just add an S in front of the id, right? He represents the id, okay? Now, every character in that movie represents one of the systems of the personality. Now, they have all 3, and you can see all 3. But Woody is our ego, right? More rational, leader, decisive. And Buzz is our superego, right? Very moralistic. He has to be the space ranger that protects the world, rids it of evil and enemies and so on and so forth. Okay. All right. And you can go down each character and see which one they stand for. Okay. But also in interactions, one of my favorite interactions is when Woody and Buzz are fighting underneath the truck. You can see them voice all of their personality. Okay. But we'll talk about it. There's a lot of Freud in that movie. Another one is Dr. Seuss, The Cat and Hat is based on this interaction. Okay. And how they work together. Okay. So, you have a lot of, hopefully you've got that first part of the psychoanalytic theory. We'll do a second part to it tomorrow. It's pretty big. I think my morning live stream was about 40 minutes. So I'm going to cut about 10 minutes or so off of that just because we went fast, just so you have another live stream to look at. And sometimes I find out that my notes, my presentation better the second time because in the morning I'm tired. But that is Freud, okay? And that's his psychoanalytic theory of personality, that we develop it from childhood, that we do have biological parts of our personality, but we also have things that are impacted by the environment as we grow, as we develop our 3 systems and then how they interact with each other, okay? And then we pull traits from this, okay? All right, so again, just remember, visit Canvas. All right, look over your chapter 15 assignments. And there you have everything listed that you need, including the names of all the personality tests that you need for the lab, okay? And again, it's the same thing, okay? So you've got your AP notebook. You got to do your vocab for chapter 15. answer your learning targets, get the names. We have a lot of names. All right. And then you have the lab, okay, which we'll be doing together, 10 personality tests. Then you have your in-class vocab assignment, the 4 and 2. And then you'll have a quiz, which will probably be the same thing, but I'd count on doing the same thing. This time you'll need to do it by yourself and not with a partner, but it probably will be the 2 learning targets. Oh, I gotta stand up. Will be the 2 learning targets, then you'll have to incorporate 10 total vocab, 5 in one question and 5 in the other. Okay. As always, if you have any questions, text me, email me. Whatever you want. Hope you're doing well. It's a beautiful day outside. I'm gonna go get some fresh air and sunshine here. If you need anything, let me know. And then also don't forget your journal critique is due by Friday as well. And you guys are doing an excellent job on those as people send them in. And I'll send a picture of the notes. Okay. See you, AP Psych. Have a good day.